Hello friends, and welcome to part 1 of the Elven Lord helmet tutorial. Let's get started. When tracing the patterns onto the leather, I like to use a fine tip marker to trace around the edges of each pattern. When it comes to cutting out the leather, there are so many options, but my preference is to use a sharp retractable blade that I keep polished to separate the pieces into more manageable bits. It's also great for any long even curves or straight lines. Then for most of the cutting, I'll switch over to heavy duty leather shears for the rest. Wetting the leather with water allows for easier cutting. It also allows for tooling and shaping of the leather in later stages. Maintaining the correct ratio of moisture content is an art. I typically dip all the parts into a tub briefly, and then use a spray bottle as the leather gets too dry. The Elven Lord is a premium theme, with a lot of tooling and shaping to come, so I'll be using Herman Oak, which is a premium leather throughout the series. For the thickness or weight of leather, I suggest something in the 9 to 10 ounce range for most armor projects, but you can go a couple ounces higher or lower according to your preference. This leather and many of the tools and materials used in these tutorials are provided by Weaver Leather. Weaver Leather is a sponsor of this video, and they are a major supplier of all things leathercraft. They have an online store full of tools, leather, hardware, and other crafting supplies at a great value. We appreciate their support, and you can also support future tutorials by using the affiliate link when you get ready to stock up on your next leather crafting project. Find the link in the description and check out their website. If you're new to crafting, it will still be very useful for you to check out the earlier themes like the fantasy armor, which is designed as a crash course and full of tips and techniques to get you well on your way. Next, I'll use an edge beveler to cut off the sharp edges of the pieces. Just be sure to not bevel the lines that are going to be sewn. I'll revisit that a little bit later in the video. Another nice thing about this leather is just how easy it is to get a very nice burnish with a little moisture and a single pass with a slicking tool. Now I get to decide what kind of tooling I want to do for this piece. You can go as basic or advanced as you like, or nothing at all. First, I need to transfer any desired design lines to the leather. I find just tracing with a ballpoint pen is sufficient. If you're worried about ink smears, just use a stylus. Instead of tracing over the borders, I'll use a compass to make more even guidelines along the edges. Then I'll use a swivel knife to carve the lines with a firm pressure. To punch the holes, I'll be using this rotary hand punch. Alternatively, you could also use an affordable tube punch or the punches with interchangeable heads. Now I get to decide what kind of tooling I want to do for this piece. For this primer, I'll go ahead and keep it simple and demonstrate again one of the fundamental tooling methods that you'll be using a lot, which is your standard beveling. Then I'll be using a smooth beveling stamp to follow along all of the carved lines. The trick is to make each strike as consistent as possible, but it's perfectly fine to make multiple passes to keep averaging out the strikes. You can use a bone fit or many various modeling tools to make subtle corrections as you go. It's not all that different from sculpting a bit of clay. Light is your friend in this. Make sure, especially when using a smooth beveler, to hold the leather at different angles so you can see how the light glints off of your freshly created lines. One thing I would encourage you to start doing at this stage, if you aren't already, is skiving the underlapping edges of your projects. There are a number of ways to achieve this, but this handheld skiver can make quick work of knocking down the inside edges. Only do this on the underside of edges that you know will be overlapped. This will improve comfort when wearing compared to having an abrupt sharp corner. It will also make shaping and assembly easier due to the leather being a bit thinner. This helmet core requires a little bit of basic wet molding to get the shape just right. I'll provide a more comprehensive guide on wet forming in later videos, but for now let me just cover the basics. Wet molding or wet forming is a process where you wet the leather and force a more three-dimensional shape either over a mold or by hand. You can use a variety of objects like balls to aid in this process, and you can definitely get creative. I assume that most people will be able to get access to something like a baseball or softball, for example. I happen to use a metal dome myself. A helmet is a very dimensional piece, so we need to make sure all the leather pieces that start flat get shaped in a way that fits the intended design of the helmet, which you'll see in a moment and can compare against, but for now just start by dishing out the pieces. Use your hands to manipulate the leather as you go. Just go in small increments and be as even as you can. At this stage you can dye and finish your pieces, but I'm going to skip that step for now. I think I have my mind made up on what color to make this series, but it's a decision that will affect the entire suit, so I want to make sure to get it right. I also want to leave it open for community feedback, so please sound off below and comment on what color scheme you think would look best for this series. There's one part of this project that needs to be hand-stitched, so I'll be demonstrating a cross-stitch here. When it comes to sewing, there are many options and tips worth explaining, and alternatives to stitching here that would look great like lacing, but I'll save a lot of that for a standalone video so we can stay on task here. For now, I just want to convey enough to get you started if you have zero experience with sewing leather. We need to make the holes for the threads to go through, and there's all sorts of options here too. I happen to have a pair of pliers that make stitching holes, which I find rather convenient. Though I don't know if this particular tool is still available anymore. If you don't have any tools yet, you can get started cheaply with an awl or a basic prong chisel. These are very common. The reason we don't bevel the edges along the cuts of stitch lines is because we want the edges to meet flush against each other. I'm using this white 1.2mm rivets thread. It's very strong and comes pre-waxed. It also comes in a lot of colors and a lot of varieties. I just chose white for something neutral because I haven't decided what color scheme to go for yet. To do the actual sewing, I'll be using these John James Saddler's harness needles in size 2-0. The amount of thread you will need will vary depending on the spacing of your stitch lines, the thickness of the leather, and the type of the stitch. I estimated about 12 times the length of the stitch, which was almost spot on, but just a hair too short. Be sure to trim the thread at an angle to easily thread through the eye of the needle. When starting the sewing, I like to give it a few loops at the starting point for added strength. Then I go up one hole and cross over to the opposite side and pull through. I'll tighten each stitch from the back as I go. I'll go straight across on the back instead of crossing. This provides a tighter stitch pattern to the front, but you can skip a stitch and cross in the back too. Repeat the process until you're done. I'll try to be consistent with each pass so the overlapping threads are uniform throughout. If you find your hands getting sore, this is normal at first. If you run out of thread when sewing, you can easily tie it off and pick up where you left off. I ran out just before the end, so I grabbed a short bit of thread and continued as before. When I finish the stitch, I wet the leather and hammer it over the seam. This sets the thread into the leather to help prevent wear on raised threads. It also blends the shape of the helmet along the seam. Now with all the pieces in hand, it's time for assembly. If you are careful with the wet forming process, all the pieces should line up fairly well, and this should just be a matter of setting rivets. It can be challenging to set rivets on a dome piece like this, but you can also simply set the rivets flat from the inside with any normal hammer. I'll be using this metal burnishing dome. It's made for metalworking, but it's also a great investment even if all you do is leatherworking. I get asked about this a lot, so I'll drop a link with a discount code below. I'll start the assembly with the middle piece and work my way out. Just follow the process as shown here. Before we wrap up, I want to thank our patrons for supporting this content. If you enjoy these tutorials and would like to help us with future content, please consider becoming a patron yourself and get access to pattern drops and behind the scenes content and more. When you complete the assembly, you can wet the leather again and make any final adjustments to the shape. When you finish your project, please do me a favor and leave a picture review on the Academy and share it with others in our Discord channel and tag us on social media. We'd love to see. The Elven Lord is the 4th complete armor suit theme offered in the Prince Armory Academy. It will be an advanced series that will share many new interesting and complex techniques. This pattern is also split into 2 different options. You will have the option to buy the helmet core only as featured in this video, and then there will be the complete version that includes the core and all visual enhancements like the visor, top comb, tail, and will also come with exclusive Academy only premium lessons. Since this is the first project of the series, I decided to separate this build into 2 parts and use this helmet core as a primer to recap some of the basics of leather crafting and armor making. For additional information on purchasing, printing, sizing, and preparing the patterns, and answers to many common questions, please check out the Quick Start Guide and FAQ available at the Prince Armory Academy website. So here's the finished result of our helmet core. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and please be sure to let me know what color scheme you think we should go on this new series. I really do want to hear from everyone. Consider subscribing and getting notifications if you'd like to see the next video where we will finish this helmet.